After nearly 2 decades of paranormal research, we are constantly faced with a supernatural theme, a reoccurring ghostly chorus that cannot be ignored, and it's that the heart of many hauntings are deeply rooted in familial connections. It's our pursuit of this persistent trend that compels us to delve into the phenomena of those visited by their departed loved ones.
I looked over at him and I literally saw him take his last breath, and he opened his mouth and this amazing green vapor came up out of his mouth, and I truly believe that it was his soul that left his body.
And she sat down next to his bedside and she held his hand and he passed away. She knows what she's talking about.
I did a little bit of research into your family. I have something I'd like to show you.
In this episode of Family Spirits, we meet with death doula, Beth Deering, who possesses what she calls an inherited gift for seeing the dead. Beth has devoted herself to providing comfort to those on their deathbeds, using her unique abilities, reconciling a lifetime of paranormal experiences.
My name is Beth Deering, and I'm a professional psychic medium, paranormal investigator, and a death doula. So a death doula, many cultures, it goes back many cultures, pretty much assists people, lets the family know what's going on with the process of dying, looking for physicalities. The majority of people that hire a death doula do not have mechanical things with them. They prefer to go more naturally, but oftentimes we do have a medical situation. And with my abilities, I'm able to assist people and let them know that it is okay if something is starting to shut down or if they're starting to become agitated, to let the family members know that I'm feeling more of a transition, more of them wanting to cross over. And oftentimes I will start to feel the physicality of their situation, their body, and how they're feeling. My first real paranormal experience happened when I was 7. I had an experience at 3, but really didn't understand what it was. My mom and dad were Chip and Joanna Gaines before there was a Chip and Joanna Gaines, and they took me to these amazing historic places. We went to Monticello as a child. I knew where Jefferson's bedroom was and the history of the house, and not knowing things and not able to vent or confide in somebody. And I grew up as an only child, but mysterious things were happening pretty much from age 7 on up to present day. Growing up as a kid and trying to accept my abilities and not understand my abilities, I wore many hats. I have a degree in environmental education, and I also have a mental health background, and I think sometimes you gotta be a little bit nuts to do what we do in this field, but it's just an amazing field to be in. And I started to transition to being drawn to the terminally ill and the medical profession, as it were, in the geriatric population, and started working with hospice as a hospice aide. And oftentimes I would not tell my clients or their families about my abilities, but then shortly after that, people were starting to discover that I was connecting with the other side.
My name's Michelle. I've known Beth Deering for 15 years. I never believed in the paranormal until I met Beth. I've sat in on many of readings she's done for people, and it's fascinating to me. She is fantastic, and the detail she has is just great, and it makes you a believer. As far as her being a death doula, she helped my brother transition from Earth to the other side.
Beth is very interesting because she's a death doula, right? I've heard about this many times before. I've read about it, I've seen documentaries about it, but I've never have actually met someone or have studied someone that actually helps people transition through death. Death is an inevitable part of life, and that's something we all have to face, is our own mortality. And I think that Beth's story specifically really was interesting.
The way she came about doing it honestly does seem like something straight out of like a comic book. Like, she had these paranormal experiences ever since she was a kid. She says that she knew that she had this gift or this ability, this sight, but she wanted to use it for good.
And having the privilege of sitting there holding someone's hand and telling a family who's waiting for their loved one to transition. First situation was my dad. He's been gone since 1995, and he had Alzheimer's, and he had surgery. And he had been at the hospital probably just a couple of days, and he was in recovery, but completely aware of his surroundings and not really on any type of medications or pain meds or anything like that. And I came to visit him in the afternoon and noticed that he was looking up at the ceiling, like he was noticing something or something that I couldn't see at that present moment. And he summoned me, he said, "Come on over here, I want to show you something." Okay, and he said, "I want you to go down and sit at the end of the bed where you were, but look above me." And I said, "Okay, Daddy, I'll do that." And I sat there just for a few seconds, and all of a sudden I noticed this form.
The root of our study of ghosts and hauntings is death. You know, again, we don't know what's right or wrong within all this. We don't know exactly what this paranormal phenomena is, right? We can't say, oh, it is consciousness that survives death. We can't 100% say that. Death is kind of the root of all this. And to have someone that is a death doula that works and surrounds herself in these end-of-life situations was a perfect example of what we're doing with this case study.
Well, she's all about shining light into the darkness when it comes to people's final moments here on Earth in the body.
And I said, "Daddy, what is that?" And he says, "I believe it's my guardian angel, and I think I'm going to be going to the Lord soon." And sure enough, a couple weeks later, we were in the nursing home, and I was at work, and I got a call from my mom, and she said, "I think you need to take the day off. I really feel that your dad's very close, and we want you to be there." And I grabbed his hand, so I knew that he knew that I was there, and he squeezed my hand, so I knew that he heard my voice, and I said, "I'm here with you." And I looked over at him, and I literally saw him take his last breath, and he opened this mouth, and this amazing green vapor came up out of his mouth, and I truly believe that it was his soul that left his body.
I asked her one day, I said, "My brother's not doing too well up the hospital. Would you go with me?" And she said, "Sure, I would."
Chris became a very, very dear friend of mine. Oddly enough, he was the brother of a dear friend of mine, Michelle.
She came to the hospital. My family was all in the room. We knew it was his last moment on Earth, and she sat down next to his bedside, and she held his hand, and he passed away.
I remember I sat on, I believe it would have been his, it was his right-hand side, and I held his hand and I said, "Chris, I'm here." And a tear, a single tear, came down the side of his face.
She is very passionate about trying to take away negative connotations with death, the fear of death.
You know, one thing, the three of us are here. The three of us are working on this case studies because we want to know what happens, right? We want to know what happens when we die.
That's a worthwhile pursuit if I ever heard of one. You know, the fact that she dedicated her life to this, to helping people at the end of their own lives. You know, she dedicated her life to helping people at the end of theirs. So it's a good thing. If I was a kid and I was like growing up, would you grow up to be a death doula? That's a cool job. That's really, really cool.
And when he passed, we stepped out into the hall, and I said, "What did you see?" She said, "Michelle, I seen heaven."
Or oftentimes I will start to experience something supernatural, maybe start smelling the cologne of a loved one that's already on the other side. And oftentimes you will start to see them reaching where they're connecting to the other side. And I truly believe people during that transition do connect and they do see their loved ones waiting for them.
She said, "I seen a big wooden table. They were sitting there waiting." And she said, "I could actually feel and hear the chair scoot out on the floor." That's when he passed away.
What she's doing is actually more of a celebration of life than death. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And the room smelled like flowers. It was beautiful. You could smell this beautiful smell. She knows what she's talking about. And these people come to her, through her. She speaks to them. She's just fantastic, and I'm a true believer, and I always will be.
Well, it started with whom I believe was my great-grandfather, Thomas Buttrin. I'm from Polish descent, And I'm third generation American. My family was in Poland and the Austria area during World War II, and they came over on the boat and settled in Ohio. But from what my mom told me, what history that she knew about him, being that that was her grandfather when I was 6 months old, and I just found this out a couple of years ago. My mom said, now I'm starting to put two and two together as to where your abilities came from, because when you were 6 months old, your grandfather literally said, as he's holding you, handing you back to me, I passed my gift on to her. And he died, I guess, short time after that when I was 6 months. And I believe my grandmother, his daughter, was a little bit gifted. It seems like she knew things out of the ordinary. And then comes my mother, who is very prophetic. She's what I call a prophetic artist. When I was born, literally all these amazing supernatural things were happening as I'm growing up as a child. My grandmother, Sophia Dayton, she came to live with me after my grandfather passed, and it was the day actually that I finally had to release her to hospice. She went into what's called terminal illness, and they start to get very agitated and sometimes very non-communicative, and she was taking a nap that afternoon, and she started to do the reaching. And that afternoon, she started doing the reaching, and I said, do you see Papa, Grandpa? And she said, yes. And I said, who else do you see? And she said, Tata, who is my great-grandfather, her father. I do believe it's in my gene pool. I believe it's handed down through my family's genealogy.
Hi, Beth.
Hello.
I'm Craig.
Nice to meet you. What a
Nice to
pleasure.
meet you.
Thank you.
Well, I have never met a death doula before, so this is like a special treat for me. In fact, I'll be honest with you, as a historian, usually of haunted locations, and even as a paranormal investigator, I've never run into death doulas before, so this is all kind of new to me. Well, let's talk about your family a little bit. I pulled some records, so I would like to run them by you and have you kind of fill in the blanks on some of them.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay. I found this photo. I don't know if you've seen this before, but I want to know if you recognize him.
I'm not familiar. No.
This is supposedly your dad.
Oh my gosh.
So I want to run that by you.
My word.
We'll get back to him.
Okay.
Okay, because
Yes.
he's quite a character in his own right. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your grandmother and Sophia.
Yes.
What do you know about her?
Well, from what I was told, my family came from the Warsaw or Poland area, possibly Austria, that she came over and was born here. She was a daughter of many children.
Your grandfather, Clyde.
Yes.
You know him
Yes,
as well?
very well. He was a veteran in World War II and served our country and came back from the war.
So on your father's side, who was Hazel Markland?
I don't
The
recall the
Markland.
name.
I'm seeing here Hazel Markland, January 30th, 1914 to March 8th, 1998. But it said she was preceded in death by her husband, Frank Markland, who died January 1990, two sons, James Byron Smith
Okay.
and Robert Stephen Smith.
Okay. Byron Ward Smith
Okay.
is my dad. My dad's parents were killed in a car crash, actually involving a locomotive.
Your dad's name was Byron Ward Smith. Now, how the heck did he get a nickname, Barney?
You know, everybody called him that, and I don't know how that came about. But I remember growing up as a kid, you're Barney's daughter, and everybody knew Barney Smith.
Right.
I have no idea, but that's definitely my dad, for sure.
Well, then
my
you're going to get a
word.
kick out of this if you haven't seen it yet. That's an advertisement for your dad's barbershop featuring your aunt,
My
Marion.
gosh, no way.
And you can see right there, it's Barney's. That was the name of his
My
barbershop.
Gosh, I'm about ready to cry.
I found this picture. I'm sure you will recognize her.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. That was my wedding picture. My first #1 husband, Richard Lippincott, and we share a son, Jonathan, together. And this house that this photo was taken in, this was an 1862 house that my dad and mother restored in Old Town West in Newark. Very haunted. This house brought mediumship to the forefront because this place is where my mom and dad really started to believe in the other side and the encounters. The spirits that I saw in this house were residents, I believe, there, and possibly, from what I was told, the history that I did, one of the entities is very possible came attached with the stairway that I'm standing on.
One of the things that I just kind of been observing, because I had the opportunity to interview quite a few people that have similar stories, and there's a lot of mediumship that seem to be somehow connected to a haunted property. Now, who was the one that, when you were 6 months old, passed on the gift?
That was my grandfather Buttran, who would have been Sophie's father.
Tell us a little bit about them, what you remember about them.
Okay, but I remember my mom telling me the story of how when she was growing up, prophetic things that he would say and things that came to fruition that she witnessed growing up as a child. And about 2 years ago, out of the blue, she just informed me, she said, now it's starting to make sense. And I said, what? And she says, when you were a baby, and your great-grandfather, Thomas Buttran, was holding you, and he passed you to me to hold. He said, I now pass my gift to her. The rest is history.
So you believe that most of the medium power
Yes.
is on your mom's side,
Yes.
and it goes back at least 3 generations, if not more.
Correct. I believe so.
If your dad were here in spirit and listening to our conversation, do you think he would have anything to pipe in and add?
You know, you have my curiosity now, you know, because I don't know. I don't know if it was forced on him that he had to accept it, or maybe there was a chance that he was a believer back then and just didn't understand what it was. I know in my heart now, even when I go visit him at his grave, my ears start ringing, and that's always my sign for spirit when I go anywhere. And I went a few weeks ago and I said, Daddy, I hope you're proud of what your daughter's become. And my ears were ringing intently, and I said, I think that's a good sign.
Do you absolutely believe that departed family members are guardian angels or can be guardian angels?
You know, I have mixed emotion about that. I tell people, from what I've learned, I'm never going to dispute that because I always believe they're looking after our best interest and know what's going on in our current lives, because when I do readings, they show me current situations. I'll tell a family member, so-and-so is saying this. I just said that yesterday. Okay, that's confirmation that they're right there. They're just not in the physical form.
And do you feel that some of your departed family drop in and watch after you?
Absolutely. Absolutely do. Yes. I smelled ivory soap the other morning, and I know that was my dad. I smelled ivory soap, and oftentimes I'll smell, he'd use the straight razor and the brush and the old mug, one of the very few things that I have of
Being
him.
a barber, what would you
Absolutely.
expect,
We're gonna do
right?
old school. We're not doing a Bic or anything like that, right? Or a razor. And I smelled shaving cream, and I called my mom and I said, I think Daddy's here because I'm smelling shaving cream. And she said, Beth, I smelled it this morning too. To have that confirmation, and I know with the years that I've done what I do professionally as an investigator or just with my abilities, it takes an incredible amount of energy to manifest a smell.
Yes.
They really want you to know they're hanging around when they do that.
Because you weren't doing like readings or doing anything like that at that age, were you? Or were you not?
I was sensitive to that age, but hid it.
Yes.
Because it was so taboo. And you didn't want to talk about it, you know? And growing up, my mom and dad, we'll talk about it when we get home. If you're having an issue or feeling things, let's talk about it when we get home.
So I've always been curious. Do you think that it's entirely possible that people with mediumship ability, whether or not they're fully aware of it or not, do you think that they may possibly be drawn to certain locations that turn out to be active.
Very much so. Very much so. It's really strange that you brought that up because now I'm starting to do my own research as places that I went to as a child.
Beth, it's really been my pleasure actually getting to know your family.
Thank you.
Through the records, and I hope that brought back some
Just
memories and
incredible.
even new information
Yes.
for you to kind of ponder over.
Absolutely. This is so lovely. This is a wonderful gift. Thank you so much. I'm very appreciative.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you. Certainly will do that.
Right.
Although Beth possessed psychic abilities from a young age, it wasn't until her father passed that her gift transformed into a new calling. Not only does she bring comfort to those who are frightened to meet the ultimate end that awaits us all, but her work is a reminder that death may be a new beginning, with implications that could surpass anything we could ever imagine.
So I would like to tell anybody out there that's watching and pondering, and is there really an afterlife? 100%, without any hesitation.
Don't fear it. And you see your family, and that's the main thing, is seeing your family. And it does bring great comfort. It really does.